Hi, boys and girls, and welcome to our Vacation Bible School, Champions for God. And today we have Rosa-Leigh is here to join me, and I'm Aunt Lori. Rosa-Leigh, Rosa-Leigh, Rosa-Leigh,
Get out of here.
Rosa-Leigh,
What's it?
Rosa-Leigh,
They're gonna get me.
Rosa-Leigh, wake up.
Huh? Oh no. Where are they?
Where are who?
Oh, you know. They're here. They're hiding.
Who is hiding?
Oh, those long, green, and they got great big teeth, and they got orange eyes that glow in the dark. And they're gonna get me.
Rosa-Leigh, what are you talking about?
The alligators, they're all over my room.
There's no alligators and we're not in your room. We're at Vacation Bible School.
They are?
Yes, we are.
But they were gonna eat my shoes and my teddy bear, and then they were gonna eat my blanket, and I was next.
Well, I think you're dreaming.
I'm not dreaming. It was true. It was so real.
Well, you know what? Sometimes our dreams are very real.
Is it ever real? Are you sure they're not here?
Yes, I'm sure.
Just a minute.
What are you doing?
I'm checking.
There's no alligators in here. There's no alligators in Newfoundland.
There isn't?
No.
Oh, well, that's good. Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. Actually, not only are there no alligators, but there's nothing to be afraid of, because sometimes when we dream, things seem to be really real, but when we wake up, we realize there was really nothing to be afraid of.
Oh, yes, there was. I was terrified.
Yes, I can tell you were terrified. Do you know what you do when you're afraid?
Well, of course I do.
What do you do?
I called 911.
No, no, you don't. You don't call 911.
Oh, and I scream.
No, you don't scream either.
I call help.
Well, all those things are things that people do when they're afraid, but I was thinking of something else.
Just a minute. Let me think. Alligators on my floor. Do you have a cell phone?
Yes.
Then can you make a call for me?
What's the call?
911. Do you know how to call 911?
Yes, I do, Rosa-Leigh. It's not real, remember? It was just a dream.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're afraid, that's not what we're supposed to do.
It isn't? Is there another number?
Well, not another number, but somebody else we're supposed to call on.
Well, I could call Dad, but you know what? He's a sound sleeper. And if I really wanted to get his attention, I'd have to go, Dad! And I don't know if that would wake him up.
Oh my. Rosa-Leigh, I wasn't thinking of calling your father. I was thinking that you would have to call on God for help.
Oh, well, I never thought of that. I really don't think God cares about their dreams.
Well, actually, he cares about everything. And there's a verse today. And our verse today is found in Isaiah 12, verse 2. And it says, Behold.
Behold? What does that mean?
Well, it means look or pay attention. God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid.
Oh, well, I suppose if I'm trusting God, maybe I wouldn't be afraid.
Yeah, well, we don't need to be afraid because he's become our salvation.
Okay. You know what?
What?
I think that is a song.
I don't think it's a song.
I'm sure it's a song.
Rosa-Leigh, it is not a song.
It is a song. Can I sing it?
Okay, you can sing it once.
Okay. Are you ready?
No, I'm not, but go ahead.
Here we go.
Okay.
Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He has become
is our verse.
I hope the boys and girls can learn that verse.
I hope they can too.
And maybe they can sing the song with me sometime.
And maybe. Say goodbye, Rosa-Leigh.
Bye, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed my singing.
Yeah, right. Bye, boys and girls.
Hello and welcome back for day 2 of our virtual Champions for God Vacation Bible School. And today I don't have one item, I have 3. A horn, a candle, and a pitcher. Let me ask you a question. Would you like to go to war with a candle or a torch, a pitcher, and a horn? Well, the children of Israel did in our story today, and you will love to see what they did. Now, our story begins with a man by the name of Gideon. And Gideon is today our champion for God. And he was a man who God put in charge of an army of 32,000 men. This army had collected because the Midianites for 7 straight years had come down and taken all their food and their livestock, or their farm animals, their cows, their sheep, their oxen, their camels, and taken them back to Midian. So Gideon got these men together so that they could defend the land of Israel. Gideon had 32,000 men. And the Midianites, the Bible says, were numbered in such that they could not be numbered. But someone suggested that maybe they had probably 135,000 men. In other words, for every 1 man that Gideon had, the Midianites had 4. But guess what? God told Gideon that Gideon had too many men because God wanted to make sure that all of Israel knew that it was him that saved them. You see, because the Midianites came as a punishment, almost in a way that God sent them there to punish the Israelites. And now God was going to deliver them from the Midianites, but he needed Gideon to be faithful and fearless. Have you ever been afraid? Are you afraid of COVID-19 and maybe even catching it? Maybe your parents are a little fear. There's a lot of people out there today that are very, very afraid. And in fact, God told Gideon that he should go to his men, all 32,000 of them, and tell them, if any of you are afraid, you are to go home. Could you imagine what was going on among the ranks of Gideon's army? As one man looked at another man, he looked to his right, he looked to his left. 22,000 men left. Let's do a math lesson. What is 32,000 minus 22,000? What's that? That's correct. Yes, 10,000. Gideon now was down to 10,000 men. It was now 14 Midianites for every Israelite. Gideon's army was shrinking, but the Midianite army was just the same. Fear. You know, Bible tells us, and God tells us, that fear isn't necessary. We don't need to live a life afraid because God is with us. Our memory verse, Isaiah 12:2 says, "Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He has also become my salvation." He was going to protect the children of Israel. He was going to save them from the Midianite army. And all they had to do is not fear, but trust God. So Gideon went to tell his men that, here, we're down to 10,000. This is what we're going. But God told him again. Gideon, he says, Gideon, you still have too many men. Ooh. Could you imagine? Gideon now started with 32,000. Now he's down to 10,000. And now God is telling him he still has too many. God wanted everybody to know for sure that without a doubt, there was no way that Gideon and his men defeated the Midianite army. God wanted them to know so that later, after it all was over with, they couldn't say, well, you see, the reason we won is we're so much better than they are. He didn't want them to even be able to take God out of the picture, which they had often done in the past. So, Gideon was told to take his men down to the river. And Gideon was to watch the men as they drank at the river. If they got down on their hands and knees and lapped the water, they were to be sent home. If they got down and took water in their hand and sipped the water out of their hand, they were to stay. Well, guess what? 9,700 lapped like a dog. And Gideon had to send them home. Now, 10,000, back to our math lesson, 10,000 minus 9,700 leaves what? Don't forget, watch your decimal places. That's right, 3,000. No, wrong decimal place. Aha, caught myself too. 300. Only 300 remained. But Gideon, he was still a little nervous. And God knew he was a little bit nervous. Because, well, let's face it, everything we know about Gideon tells us that he was a little bit of a nervous Nelly. He was nervous about even calling this army together. He was nervous about letting God use him to do this task. But guess what? He was still willing, even though it made him a little nervous, he was still willing to do whatever God asked him. So God told him, he said, Gideon, take your servant and go down by the Midianite camp. It was now after dark. It was getting dark at night. And so they snuck down by the Midianite camp. And when they got there, they listened. It was amazing what they heard. What happened is they heard two men in a tent. And he overheard them talking. One of them had just woken up from a bad dream. And he said to the other one, you're never going to believe what I just dreamed. I just dreamed that a barley loaf came down. You know what a barley loaf is? Bread. Barley bread. And he said a round loaf of barley came rolling into our camp and knocked over the tent and crushed it. And the other fellow said, I know what that dream means. That means that God has delivered this camp into the hands of Gideon. That God was not going to be on our side. And Gideon heard every word that he had said. That encouraged Gideon, and Gideon realized that God had said yes, I will deliver them into your hands. And Gideon quickly snuck away, him and his servant snuck away back to the men. And they set up their plan. That's where our strange weapons come into play. Now, they didn't have a candle like we did today. They had a torch. It was basically a long stick with a ball of something on it that was flammable, usually dipped in some sort of a fire, not proof, but fire, and they would be able to dip it in like tar or something that would stick there, but yet be very, very flammable. And so they would stick it in and they bring it out, and they would light it, and it was the torch. It would light their way, sort of like a flashlight today, but in those days they had a torch. They had the torch, And the pitcher, it wasn't plastic like the one we had this morning. The pitcher they had was made out of clay. And it was fired and easily broken, by the way. And that's important in our story today. And the horn, they used to take the horns of a ram, and they would hollow it out, and they'd put a hole at both ends, and they would blow into it. And that was the horn that they all had. So they had 300 horns, 300 men, 300 pitchers, and 300 torches, all ready. And Gideon told his men, now go out, and I want you to surround the Midianites. 300 men against 135,000. And they're going to surround them? They did. They lined up around the outside of the Midianite camp. And they were told when Gideon gave the signal to blow their horns and to shout. And you're going to be amazed at what they actually shouted. I'm not going to tell you yet because I don't want to spoil the surprise. So they did. They lined up in a circle around the camp. 100 men over here, 100 men behind him, and 100 men over there. And they got ready, and they waited. And just about the time of the change of the morning guard, just before it became daylight, so that they would have, it was like the darkest time of the night. You know, they say the darkest time comes just before the dawn. And that's when they did it. That's when their plan came to be. And when they got the signal, they were to break the pitcher so that their torches would show. Because the pitcher would be over the torch so that the light wouldn't shine out so they couldn't see them until the very last minute. So they would blow their horn. And then they would break the pitcher and show off their light. And they were to scream, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they didn't just scream it once. They screamed it over and over again. Not like tiny little girls. Hello, hello, hello. No, really loud. The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they thought there were thousands and thousands and thousands of Israelites in the hillside. And they were afraid. And the Midianites jumped up, grabbed their swords, and anybody they bumped into, they started fighting with. But the Israelites weren't even in the camp yet. And they ended up fighting among themselves. And God delivered them by causing them to fight themselves. And when it was all over with, the Midianites were gone, never to return. Isn't that an amazing story, how God protected them? God used them, Gideon, to rid the Israelites of a problem, sort of like a thief. Could you imagine if somebody came into your house every year and stole all your food and all the food you were going to have for the rest of the year and went to your bank account and emptied out all the money so you couldn't buy more? Because that's what the animals were back then. They were like a bank account. They were what made them. That was the value of that family. Each family was how many animals they had. It was like their currency or money. And so they would have no money and no food. And many of the Israelites starved to death. And that's why they were quite afraid of the Midianites coming. But God delivered them. But you see, why did God have to come to deliver them? He had to come deliver them because God was punishing the Israelites because of their, yes, that's right, sin. The Bible tells us, for all have sinned. Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. How about you? Have you sinned? Well, I don't know. Have you ever disobeyed mom or dad? Yeah? Well, that's sin. And that means you have sinned just like the rest of us. We all have sinned. And the Bible tells us that God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross, as we talked about yesterday, to take the punishment for our sin. that we might have our sins forgiven, and that because he died, and that he was buried in the tomb as we had on the picture yesterday, and then he rose again the third day. That is the gospel. And because Jesus did all of that, we can know that our sin can be forgiven. Just like the sins of the Israelites were forgiven when God gave Gideon the plan and then just took care of the problem of the Midianites stealing their food. Have a good day now, boys and girls.
It's just a story if there isn't any proof. Take a look, it's plain to see. There's all the proof that there could ever be. Just look at all the evidence and it will all make sense. Every word of the Bible is true. There's no mystery, look at the history. Every word, yes, every single word, yes, the Bible is the word of God, and every single word of it is true. Now today, we can look back and see so many things God said had come to pass. There's no way they could have known when the prophets wrote those words so long ago. Just look at all the evidence and it will all make sense. Every word of the Bible is true. There's no mystery, look at the history. Every word, yes, every single word, yes, the Bible is the word of God, and every single word of it is true. Just look at all the evidence and it will all make sense. Every word of the Bible is true. There's no mystery, look at the history. Every word, yes, every single word, yes, the Bible is the word of God, and every single word of it is true.
Hey guys, and our verse today is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 12, verse 2. And this is what it says.
Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He also has become my salvation.
So basically what this verse is saying is that because God saved us, we can trust in him and not be afraid.
Okay, so what we're going to do for today's verse is we're going to do it in different voices. So the red is going to be a Batman voice, so like a deep voice like this. And then the light blue is going to be a squeaky voice. So Hannah, do you want to demonstrate your squeaky voice?
Like this.
And then the ones that are darker blue with the underline, the squiggly line is going to be underwater. So you're going to talk like this and do this with your hand. So let's
Begin. And we'll erase it as we go.
yeah.
Okay.
Isaiah 12:2. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He also has become my salvation. Okay, now we're gonna erase some of the words. And this one. Oh, I froze it off. It's fine. Okay.
Yep, sure.
Isaiah 12:2. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He also has become my salvation. Okay. Isaiah 12:2. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He also has become my salvation. Isaiah 12:2. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He also has become my salvation. Just gonna erase all of it now.
Leave the, yeah.
Isaiah 12:2. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. He also has become my salvation.
Good job.
Yay.
Hey guys, it's Spike and this is Ike, and today we are back with probably one of my favorite science experiments ever. And if you want to try this at home, the things you're going to need is some salt, 2 cups or glasses, 2 eggs, a tablespoon, and some different items around your house to see at the end if they float. So, what you're going to want to do first is fill the glasses with warm water. Then you're going to take one of the eggs and put them in one of the cups.
Goodbye, George.
Then
His face. Oh wait, can you see that? Oh, it won't turn.
Whoa! Oh no!
Okay.
Then add 3 tablespoons of salt and mix.
To the other cup?
Yes.
I'm getting it everywhere.
And then you're going to stir it and mix it well.
I'm making sure all the salt dissolves in the water.
Okay. And then you're going to add the other egg into the glass with the salt.
Bye, Fred.
And you'll notice that this egg floats, the one that is with in the cup with the salt. And that is because when we added the salt, it made the water heavier because the density had been changed. And now the eggs and items are able to float. So now let's see if the other items can float as well. And if they don't float, we're gonna add some more salt. You can leave that one in. That's it, the bottle cap. So the bottle cap floats. Let's see if the nail floats. Nope. The nail sinks. The paper clip sinks. The eraser sinks. The rubber band floats.
And the block is gonna sink.
And the block floats. Oh wow, the block floats. I love science.
Let's take
Okay.
these ones out and let's just
Let's add some more
salt
salt.
until the other ones float. Nope.
Nope.
I don't know if these ones are gonna float.
Well, it doesn't look like it.
Let's just put in the rest of the salt. Are they gonna float?
Doesn't look like it.
Nope.
Considering we have about. Nope. They all don't float.
Nope.
Oh well. So the salt water supporting the weight of all the objects reminds us that when we put our faith in God, we don't have to be afraid of anything. He can give us the victory over anything. There we go. So, do you guys remember what happened yesterday? In case you don't, I will give you a little bit of a review. So, young Key went to sleep and his mom still hadn't come home from the market, which wasn't normal. But he eventually went to bed and went to sleep, and that is where our story picks up today. Next page. So he woke up the next morning and he listened for any sound that might have told him that his mother had returned. But he laid in bed, looking at the ceiling, waiting for a sound that never came. So his mom still wasn't home from the market. And that made him very, very, very scared and very nervous because, as I said, that was not normal. She had now been gone for almost a whole day. So as he was lying there, he smelled all the breakfast smells from the village, and he realized how hungry he was. But then his little sister came over to him, and she started crying because she was hungry, and they didn't have any leftover food. So she started crying and asking where their mom was because she wanted breakfast. And this time, when he tried to calm her down and tell her that everything was going to be okay and that their mom would be back today at some point, she would not stop crying. And at this point, some people from the village had heard her crying and came over to see what was going on. And young Key explained that their mom had went to the village yesterday to sell vegetables, but she hadn't returned yet. So one of the ladies from their village, who they called, or who they were taught was an auntie, someone who went to church with them, some other lady in their village that they were close to, took them to her house and gave them some breakfast. Next page. So that day, because young Key couldn't go to school like the rest of the kids in his village, while they all went to school, he helped out where he could, but then he also found some sticks and stones that he could entertain himself with, him and his little sister, while they waited for everyone to return from work and school. You can show the next page. So that night, after everyone had returned, grandfather came home back to the village, and they all sat down for supper. Now, the way they would eat supper in the household is that grandfather and the rest of the males and fathers and brothers and uncles and all that would sit at one table, while the women and the children would sit at a smaller table next to them. So young Key sat down with everyone and began to eat his supper, and he realized just how hungry he had gotten. Next page. So that night, when everyone went to bed, young Key laid down in his bed, thinking of a way to find his mother. And that morning, the next morning when he woke up, he found his way to the train station or train tracks. And he thought that the train was really, really cool. And he had always dreamt of going and inside a train to see what it was like. So the train was stopped, and he decided to take a little bit of a look inside. But he was very careful and went underneath the seats. Next page. So as he was looking in the train, you can see he had to duck underneath the seat because the train started moving, and he didn't know that it was going to move, and he wanted to get out before it started moving. But as he was getting ready to leave, he heard voices, so he had to duck underneath the seat. And so he stayed there. He was now really, really, really warm because there was no air conditioning or anything like that on the train. And he began to get really, really, really hot. And as you can see right there, there's someone sitting right behind him. So he backed up, and he felt like he backed into someone. And he froze. He didn't say anything. He was very quiet. But then the person behind him bent down and said, "What are you doing under there? That's not safe. Get up. You can't be under there. Come up and sit beside me." And young Ki was very, very hesitant at first. He wasn't sure if he was supposed to get up. He didn't know if he should. But the stranger was very, very kind and very nice, so he made young Ki feel comfortable. And young Ki noticed him as someone who was different. He was a foreigner. He wasn't someone from their village. And the last time he saw someone like this, it was a missionary that came to their village. So once he got up and sat next to the man, he asked if he was a missionary. And the man said that he was, and that he had been in his village for many years. And young Ki was amazed that this man could speak his language, because most foreigners, when they come, cannot speak his language. So that also made him feel a lot more comfortable around the missionary as well. And he then began to tell the missionary the story of, why he was on the train, what he was trying to do, what happened to his mom, and that she had to come home from the market, and that he was really scared. He then asked the missionary, "I prayed to God last night. Do you think that God will help me find my mom? Do you think that God can bring my mom back safely?" And the missionary said that he believes that God will bring young Ki's mom back to him. And then as they were talking, they saw the train ticket master down at the end of the train, the person that would scan everybody's tickets and make sure that nobody was on the train when they shouldn't be, and that everyone had paid and gotten a ticket. Obviously, young Ki didn't have a ticket because he just snuck on the train, and he didn't mean to travel on the train. He just wanted to look at it, so he didn't have a ticket. And he looked at the missionary, and the missionary noticed that the ticket master was coming closer, and so they thought of something to do. And you guys will find out what happens tomorrow.
Okay, this is day 2, challenge 2. And today's challenge, you have 2 dice. Each person has 2 dice. And you are going to try to roll your dice and try to get number 1. And when you get 2 1s, then you can move on to number 2, all the way up to number 6. And whoever gets 2 6s first wins. So Kira and Hannah are going to take a challenge. And I hope you can find a friend or family member to do it with. Okay, girls, on your marks, get set, go.
Why is it going? Oh, there we go.
Move the both of them.
I'm at 4. I'm at 5.
Good job, girls. As Gideon, my men and I learned we could put our faith in God for strength to win over fear, even when the battle seemed impossible. And if you've trusted Christ as your Savior, put your faith in God for strength to win over fear. And the next time you're afraid, think of a champion's triple T for victory. Talk, think, and thank. Talk to God about your fear. Tell him what you're afraid of. Think about how great God is. He's powerful, and he'll always be with you. And thank him for his promises in his word. Be a champion for God by trusting him for strength to turn your fear into faith.